Hello, this is Matt from the Putnam County Library System. I am here to talk to you today about Twine. Twine is an extremely easy, extremely approachable, very basic programming language. You can use it to do all sorts of things, but it is primarily used for making interactive stories. You can do all different levels of complexity with these, but at its simplest, it is basically a very simple way to make choose-your-own-adventure stories. And that's what I'm going to show you a quick walkthrough of today. You do not need to have prior experience with coding or any knowledge of coding per se. Really, to refer to this as coding today is kind of an exaggeration, because we're going to just use one or two simple commands, and for the rest of it, we're just going to be writing a story and interacting with the software. One of the big reasons I'm a fan of Twine is that it is a completely free software that you can use either to download onto your computer, or you can run it in browser on any computer you're on. So there's a very low barrier of entry, there's no cost at all, and it's very basic to get into. So before I start showing you the ins and outs of it, I wanted to just let everyone see an example of how a Twine story would work. So here is a very simple one that I wrote up earlier, and I used the age-old cue to start us off. It was a dark and stormy night, and you have two options. You can go outside, you can stay inside. And then you find out that it's stormy. You get rained on, you're soaked, the end. There's a little button here that you can use to go backwards if you would like. These files are saved in web browsers. You could try to reload, but it's not going to reset it, so you'll have to use the back if you want to move around within it. That would be the end of the story. You could have a lot more in there, but we can also try the other option. And then you can decide from there what else you want to do. But it seems like we're kind of always coming to the same end, no matter what path we take. These are just choices that I made for this example. You can kind of do whatever. And if you decide you just really didn't want to reach the end, you can try to fight it, but with this story that I've made up, you kind of fall into a loop. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this out. You can see it was running the entire time in a browser window, just as a tab there. And we're going to go to the Twine website, Twinery, TWINERY.org. And don't worry, I'll post all the links in the description of the video here. Twinery.org will bring you to the Twine website, and this is the source for everything to do with Twine. So you have all sorts of things here. The main thing you'll notice in the top right corner is a walkthrough of the different ways you can use Twine. You can download on a Windows, Mac, or Linux and install it, or you can run it in browser. From what I can tell, they all run pretty much the same. I personally like to use it in browser because I like to have the flexibility of working on different computers. So I will work on one computer, I will save my files in the cloud, and then I can install it on another computer and work there. Whatever works for you. If you're going to be using the same computer every time you use this, you may as well just install it. It's just whatever you want to do. But for today, we're going to be using the in-browser mode. When you click on Use in Browser, it will take you to this little intro screen, which every time after this you can go ahead and hit skip. But today we're going to go ahead and let it know that we're new, and it'll take us through a few different basic guides. It's a talk through of what Twine used to be and where it came from. This has always been a free open source software that has been open to everyone on the internet. And it talks a little bit about how to save Twine, which is going to be a helpful reference for you later, but I'll walk you through that. So let's go ahead and dig into Twine. This is our main screen. Here in the center, all of our different stories will be saved. So if you are really prolific and you write 15 different stories, you can have them all saved here and manage them and pop back and forth from them. You've got a few different options over there on the side, which we'll talk through at one point, but let's go ahead and start in a story. First thing you gotta do is name it. I'm gonna name ours Dark Stormy Night. And then this screen is where you build the stories. At its core, Twine almost works like writing snippets of text onto Post-it notes and then interlocking them with well, Twine, I suppose. So you could really make an analog version of this with Post-it notes or index cards. yarn, thumbtacks, if you really wanted to. And that's kind of the visual interface we've got here. So if you've got that metaphor, it should make it a lot easier to understand how this works. So the first thing we will do is click in on the untitled passage that's going to be the start of our story. When you hover over the passage, you can see a few different options for trashing it, editing it, play from here, a few different things there. You can dig into all of that later, but to go ahead and start editing, you just need to double click on the passage itself. And then we'll go ahead and title it. We're just going to call this the start so that we know it's the start of our story. And then you double click in there and you can start writing. Now you can do all sorts of formatting to make your lettering look interesting, but at its core, you can just start typing a story. And now we're going to get to the main section of coding, as it were, for this, and that is the magic of brackets. When you decide you've written everything you want to write for your first passage and you're ready to start writing the decisions that will be links at the bottom of the passage, you'll go ahead and put 2 left brackets and then write whatever you want the decision to be, and then 2 right brackets. And it will show up in the story exactly as you wrote it, minus the brackets, and it will be a clickable link. And if you want to give multiple choices, you can do that here, or you could just have one option at the end that kind of serves as the next page function to help pace how people read your story. So we're going to write in 2 options, and now we're all set. We can go ahead and close out this passage, and what Twine does is automatically show us our 2 other options. So we now have our go outside cards and our stay inside card. And you can see the arrows that go from start and into each of those options, letting us know which direction we'd be flowing with the story. So to continue on, we just need to double click each one of these and fill in whatever text we want. So it's already titled for us, Go Outside. So now I will write our text for what happens when we go outside on a dark and stormy night, which is, to be honest, not very surprising, especially since you've already seen this story. This card for Go Outside serves as the end of our story. So of course I wrote the end so people know they've reached the finish of it. A lot of times you'll want to maybe put a link there that will take someone all the way back so they could just start over, or they can reload the file for the game, whatever works for you. I probably should have added something like that in there, but I didn't want to complicate this too much while we were working on our first story. And now we'll close this out and we'll load up the Stay Inside option. And just like with Go Outside, we'll write in our effects, whatever makes sense to us here. And then I want to give the same 2 options that you had at the beginning, because this is the start of that loop that we saw when we were playing through before. So I'm going to once again say that you can go outside, or I can say that you'll stay inside. And by using those brackets, you keep the same options. It'll always link you back to the same page. I close that out. You can see that we've got all 3 of those cards with the arrows showing how they interact. And if we stretch this out a little bit, it's not necessary for the use of the story, but you can see the way the arrows flow from one to another, and you can see the loop that we've made there. And the way it's set up now, you would just keep looping over and over with Stay Inside. We can go ahead and test it using the test function. You'll see some options for variables down in the corner. Those aren't necessary for this one, but they will be if you make it more complicated. And you can use the back key here to check each of our links, make sure they're working right, make sure they're going where we want to. And it looks like it's working. We can go to each option, we can link back over. But this is where if we just stay inside and stay inside, we keep seeing the same text over and over and over again, which is fine, but isn't really good storytelling in my opinion. It'd be kind of nice if we saw something change there. So now I'm going to show you how you can still show the same option, stay inside, but take you to a different story passage. So we're going to open up Stay Inside, and then we're going to go in And where we wrote stay inside in brackets, right after the stay inside part, which is the text that we still want to show up, I want people to think that they're doing the same of the two options. I'm going to go in and throw in a vertical line. On my keyboard, it's above the forward, or the backslash, excuse me. It's not an I and it's not a lowercase l. It's a vertical line. And then you can write a new passage after that. We're going to title this one boring, because it's the one that repeats boring, boring, boring. But when the viewer sees this, they're only going to see whatever's at the beginning. And now you can see that we've created a new passage. There's a boring passage that comes off of stay inside. So we can go into that, and then we can throw in that kind of placeholder text that you can read over and over and over again, and it doesn't seem strange that you're reading the same thing. It might be a little bit boring, but it's not strange. And then we'll go ahead and give our final options to go outside. And then we're going to do the go or stay inside option and make sure we do that vertical line linking it to boring instead of the original stay inside passage. And that way this becomes the loop as opposed to the previous passage. Now this is not a necessary thing, this vertical line trick, but it's helpful if you want to use the same passage for multiple decisions, or if you want to make a decision look like it's the same no matter what but have different results depending on which page it comes from. You can see how this is all mapped out. Let's go ahead and test it one more time. Debugging is always super important when you're doing any sort of coding, even simple coding. You can make this really convoluted, and just like if you were working with real yarn, you could end up tying yourself in a knot. So it's nice to check as you go to make sure you haven't made a problem for later. And if you'll notice, the stay inside option always looks like it's the same link that we had at the beginning. We don't ever see that boring text that we wrote in. And those are the two pieces of code that you need to make that entire sample game that I showed you. That's it. You just need to know how to write, put things in brackets, and how to occasionally use a vertical line to split the visible choice from where it actually links. Now there's some other options along the bottom of the screen here. You can change the view, you can make it zoom out if you've got a million little passages you want to be able to navigate amongst, but I usually like to keep it in close so I can tell what's going on. You can also use the new passage to just make a blank card. Every now and again when you're writing your links, you might have an issue where it doesn't work, where the link that you wanted, or the new passage that you linked to from a story didn't get created and your link doesn't go through. It's just a small bug within the software that I've noticed, but you can easily fix it by making your own passage, titling it the same thing as that link, and they'll automatically link themselves up. And if you want to delete an extraneous passage, it's really simple. By clicking the home key, we'll go back to the main menu. You can see our story that we started writing, and you've got some options along the side. And I want to show you how you can save all of your work. This is helpful if you're working in the cloud. It's essential if you're working in the cloud, but it's helpful even if you're working on your own computer. You use the archive button, and when you click on archive, it's going to create a file that has all of the data for all of the stories, and it's going to automatically download it for you. And that's it. It's an HTML file. It's got everything that you've written. So even if we'd made 15 different stories, it would all be saved in that one file. And you'd use import from file next time you opened up Twinery. And if you were using this online or in the browser, you would go as if you were starting all over from scratch. You would click on import from file. You would go to choose file, and you would select the file that you had created previously. And if you had it saved in the cloud, you'd want to download it, either put it on your desktop, or perhaps it would go into documents, but for mine, it went straight into downloads. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and then I can go ahead and load it right in. Now, right now, it's not going to work right because I've already got my stories here. It's going to want to replace them, and I'll go ahead and do that, but it's not really important one way or another. And that's how you go ahead and save an archive. Now make sure if you were using this in browser, you learn how to do that, because depending on your browser settings, how you've got cookies and all of your other options set up, when you close out your browser, you'll notice we did not log into anything. This doesn't have an account. It's not saving any of my information in the cloud as it is. So if I were to lose power or forget and just go ahead and close my browser window out, I would lose everything I'd written here. So you want to make sure you use that archive, and honestly, I like to use it if I've really been working for a while, I'll use it kind of often, and go ahead and save all of your data. Now, if you're using this installed on your computer, it's not necessary to do that. I believe it will save all of your information from session to session, but it still might be nice to do a backup, because you do a lot of writing and you do a lot of creating, and there's a lot of work put into these stories. It would be a real bummer to lose all of that. We're going to go ahead and show you how to export your story. So if you decide that you have finished your story and you are ready to share it with people, you're going to go over to the story here in the main menu and click on the settings button. You could play it and test it from here, but we're going to publish it to file. And you'll notice it went ahead and immediately downloaded an HTML file for us. Now, HTML files are the same files as websites. What you have there is a single file that can run your entire story. You can open this up and take that file, and you could open it in any browser, and it would go ahead and just open as if it was the story you'd made in Twine, without having to go through Twine or anything else like that. You could put it on a flash drive and share it with a friend, and they could open it up straight off the flash drive, again, into any browser. You could email it to a friend if you wanted to share it that way. What's nice about all these versions, they do not require you to have an internet connection. You could open this on any device that had a web browser, even if it was not connected to the internet, because you had the physical file. Now, the other option you would have, if you wanted, was to load it up onto your own website and then share the link out with people, and you would be set to just let anyone play your game, which is pretty cool. It's a neat way to be able to create something and publish it, which is one of, in my opinion, the great strengths of Twine. It is so very, very easy to write code for this and to tell your stories that the barrier of entry is very, very low. This means that just about anyone with just about any story has a way that they can create it and share it with others, which has really led to a huge pool of interesting and diverse Twine stories out there. Before we get on to looking at examples of other stories, I really quick wanted to show you an excellent online resource for as you decide to start coming up with your own more intricate stories. If you want to keep doing the standard choose your own adventure style, you have everything you need from what I've taught you so far to do that, but you can also go so far as to create variables. You can have equations, you can have all sorts of different coding elements that you work into this that can allow you to have inventory systems, to do mock conflict between characters in the story. You can randomize elements like having the names of characters or the colors of objects change. There's all sorts of cool stuff you can do, and they all require different snippets of code. Now, none of this is necessary to use Twine on its own, but if you want to take it a step further, you'll really want to look at this Harlow manual here. Now, Harlow is the name for the current version of Twine. The previous version was Sugar Cube. These are just the names they came up with. I'm not sure what the relevance of them is. But going to this manual, you can go through and look at all the different features that are in there. This part is more complex. I will not kid you on that. Once you start delving into this, you can really do some crazy intricate things. And that's exciting, but it can also be a little mind warping. I know I've kind of tied my head in a few knots working on this. So I don't recommend delving into this right off the bat, but I would like you to know that it's there for when you want to introduce another layer of intricacy to your code. Finally, I'm going to show you a quick way to find examples of other Twine stories that are out there. Now, this is the part that, just like anything else on the internet, has a little bit of user beware. If you are a younger child using the internet, I would recommend that you have an adult helping you with this. If you are a parent or guardian and you are looking to use Twine with your children, I think that's great. It's a really awesome coding language for that. But just like anything else on the internet, it can be affected by who uses it. And in the same way that we talked about how awesome it is that there's a low barrier of entry, it means there's also very little vetting for what is on there. If you scroll down, you can find a few different examples, and you can load up different examples as well. Now, there is a content filter that people can select on here that says that it'll keep out explicit content. I don't know exactly how accurate that is, and I would not want anyone to depend entirely on that, but that is a feature that is there. So these are just a few random stories that were shared with us, and you can go ahead and click on one of them, and it'll bring up a whole listing that's on this online database. You can scroll down, you can look for a synopsis of what's going on in the story. You can look for tags that tell you about what's going on within it, which might be another good way to vet whether or not it's appropriate for younger readers. So there we have it. That is Twine. Like I said, incredibly simple. It just takes two simple commands, the double brackets to make your story links and the use of a vertical line to obscure the final destination from the visible choice. And once you know those two snippets of coding, it is really just writing your own story. So hopefully you will be encouraged to get out there and check this out. If you do, please come in and let us know at the library about some of the cool stories you've made. Thanks, and have a great day.